I just got back from a 4-night, 3.5-day trip to New York, so I thought I would share what I packed in my travel makeup bags versus what I actually ended up wearing for both day and night, show you some of that application and share why I chose what I did and how I packed it. I knew I needed to be prepared for the heat and humidity I kept hearing about. We're about as hot and humid as you can get here in New Orleans, so I felt very prepared for that, but I knew we were going to be out in it all day and probably need to transition pretty quickly into nighttime, so I wanted to make sure I was covered. And I'm also very picky when it comes to packing my travel makeup bags and makeup bags in general. I don't think I've ever found anything that's truly perfect for me, but I can share what's been working for me so far. I typically like to carry on because checked luggage can get pretty abused and pretty hot, so I'll talk about that too. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new, and let's go ahead and get into what I brought on my last trip versus what I wore and why. Now, even though this isn't part of the makeup process, it's part of my skincare process and is in my skincare bag, I want to share the sunscreen that I brought with me because this is a major step. We're outside a lot of the day. So the sunscreen that I brought is the Summer Fridays Shade Drops Broad Spectrum SPF 30 Mineral Milk Sunscreen. The reason why I brought this particular sunscreen is because it's one I'm very familiar with. It works beautifully for my sensitive skin with rosacea. It has a very light, milky, lotiony texture that sinks into my skin beautifully. And because I have combination oily skin that's normal and can be dry around the perimeter right now, in these humid, hot months, it's pretty normal. And I can get shine and oil breakthrough in the center. This is a great combination moisturizer and sunscreen all in one. So it saves me a step. If you have dry skin, you may want to use moisturizer and then this. It absorbs very quickly. It doesn't leave a white cast. It doesn't pill under makeup. It's very cosmetically elegant. It doesn't feel heavy or make me oilier during the day. And since it was me and Brooke, my 19-year-old daughter, on this trip together, and I had a brand new unopened bottle, I knew we would both be able to use this on our face, ears, neck, and chest and not run out. Now you're seeing me apply this in a pretty controlled sectioned fashion and layering it. I don't always apply it that way. Sometimes I slap it all on at once. Whatever works for you. Sunscreen should always be the last step of your skincare in the morning, and you should always let it sink in for several minutes before you apply any makeup. Now this was in my skincare bag, not my makeup bag. I'll share that with you and some makeup bag and brush bag options after we talk about the makeup that I wore. So moving to the makeup bag, I start with a couple of prep steps. The first is moisturizing my lips before I do anything else. I brought what I use almost every day at home, the Ole Henriksen Pout Preserve Peptide Lip Treatment in Strawberry Sorbet. I also use this at night. And even though I applied eye cream during my skincare step, I wanted to give a little bit of a caffeine and a hydration boost after applying sunscreen and before applying any concealer or corrector on top. So I used this little caffeine stick that I got from Amazon. I almost brought my Tula stick in the white tube, but I wanted to streamline things. And this is smaller and still has great ingredients. The next thing I did that is a step you definitely don't want to skip if it is hot and humid, no matter what skin type you have, even if you're not wearing any eyeshadow at all, is priming your eyelids. I brought my trusty Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion. This is the anti-aging version. If you want your eyeshadow to last longer without creasing, if you want your eyeliner and mascara to not smudge or wear away, just swipe this from your lash line all the way up to your brow bone, tap it out and let it sit for about a minute. Now, I like to be as efficient as possible while something else is going on. I like to move forward and do other things. So while my eyeshadow primer was setting, I applied a mattifying primer to my shine prone areas. Now, if you have dry skin, you may want to apply a gripping primer in certain areas or a blurring primer if you have large pores, or if you have no issues, you may skip this primer step. But I am very shine prone in certain areas in heat and humidity. So I decanted 2 mattifying primers because I wasn't sure which one I was going to reach for, and these little containers take up hardly any room. So this contact lens case has foundation on this side, which we'll talk about in a minute, and Milk Makeup Pore Eclipse primer in the black tube here. This is not the primer that I reached for though. This is. Now this is an old travel Biossance container that I'd emptied and cleaned out, but in here is the Danessa Myricks Blurring Balm, the untinted translucent one that I have discovered works really well as a mattifying primer. I just apply it to my shine prone areas and sort of spread it out and let it sit for a little bit. So knowing what I know now, I could have nixed this little jar and just decanted it into here. Going back to two key things I said earlier. Number one, I like to be as efficient as possible. So while things are happening, I like to move forward with other things. And two, everything I said earlier about your eyeshadow lasting longer, not creasing, and your eyeliner and mascara not smudging, there's another step to that. Not just setting with eyeshadow primer, but you also want to set that eyeshadow primer with translucent powder. Do not skip this step in heat and humidity. So go ahead and take your translucent powder and dust it on your eyelids. A decent amount, actually. You want to be able to feel the smoothness. It shouldn't feel tacky on your eyelids or your brow bone at all. Now, I decanted my Huda Beauty Pound Cake setting powder into this little Travel by Terry powder sifter container. Sometimes I use Laura Mercier mini containers from her under eye brightening setting powder. I always save small containers for decanting purposes. Now for me and for a lot of people, powders last much longer than creams in heat and humidity. They just don't slide off your face as easily, but I did bring some cream products to layer with to just help with longevity. One of those is the Too Faced Melting Bronzing and Sculpting Stick in Chocolate Mousse. I love this for both bronzing and contouring. And I use this, I think, 2 of the days, but I would say it's optional. So if you're going to use bronzer or contour in kind of an underpainting way under your foundation to maybe help you use less foundation, now would be the time to do that. I tap on a very, very thin layer, a very small amount of my under eye corrector at this point to help camouflage the discoloration under my eyes, which you may not be able to see under these bright lights, but trust me, they're there. So I use the Bobbi Brown Stick Corrector in the shade Bisque. I want to apply a little bit of liquid blush under my foundation so it gives me a bit of a natural looking glow so that if my makeup fades, a natural flush still remains, and this lasts a decent amount of time and looks really natural and has a subtle glow without glimmer. This is Tarte Maneater Blush and Glow in Peachy Pink. I also really like the shade Pink. I just place a couple of dots on each cheek and sometimes across my nose to give a sun-kissed look and blend it out with my slanted BK Beauty 109 brush. Because of the heat and humidity, and because I might not have time to remove my makeup before touching it up or adding extra coverage for dinner or whatever we were doing at night, I thought long and hard about the foundation I wanted to bring. I wanted it to wear well throughout the day and be pretty budge proof, but not look cakey at all, to look as skin-like as possible and not make me shiny, and also apply very quickly and easily. I didn't want anything that set too quickly or to give me any issues with layering, that kind of thing. So I ended up going with Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless, which was filled up a little bit more than this, but I applied this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and today, and I still have this much in here because of how I applied it. And it turned out to be the perfect method, especially if I needed to layer any extra coverage later. And it is how my foundation is done right now, and usually I need more coverage when I'm filming, and I think it looks pretty decent. So I just took my foundation brush, which in the clips you're seeing is the Sigma F08. It is very similarly shaped and sized to the BK Beauty 109 that I used for my liquid blush. And I also brought the Chantecaille foundation and mask brush. I use this a lot for contour, foundation, and other things. It's a really great little brush for stuff like this. And I just lightly dipped my brush into the lid to get just a little bit of product on there, and then rubbed it into my palm to warm it up and work it into the brush, and then started applying it to areas of my face that I wanted more coverage. I wanted less coverage on my cheeks, so I just took the remainder there basically. And if I needed more, I would dip it back in the lid and rub it on my palm again and repeat that same process. Now, I know a lot of people use this method and find it perfect the way it is. I find taking a dry sponge and pressing it lightly to my skin really helps fuse the foundation with my skin even further, more so than just going in with a brush. It helps camouflage my pores, and it also keeps me shine free longer or more shine free during the day. There's just something about pressing it in with that sponge that makes it look more skin-like and natural, in my opinion. This is the point where I'm spot concealing any areas that need it with this teeny tiny E11 eyeliner travel brush from Sigma. I don't even know if they make this anymore. On my trip, I had my little e.l.f. concealer brush, which I left downstairs. I actually prefer that because it helps diffuse the product a little bit better. Now, to keep my layers as thin as possible so nothing would melt off or look cakey, and so everything would look as skin-like and as natural as possible, I swiped my Tower 28 concealer onto the back of my hand and dipped my concealer brush lightly into a portion of that concealer. I'm using the A506 Angie Hot and Flashy concealer brush, and I'm just tapping it to the darkest point of my under eye hollows first and blending it outwards and upwards because I want as little product against my lash line as possible. If you don't have any darkness right underneath your lash line, you may not even need to take it up against that area, but I do. I find pressing this in with a sponge helps fuse it with my skin more than I can do with a brush, so I do that too. And if I still see any darkness, I'll add a tiny bit just to those areas, keeping it very localized, and just kind of tap and blend it out. I usually do have more darkness at the darkest point of my hollows. I then set my under eye area with the N14 Nikki LaRose BK Beauty brush. I just dip it into my favorite under eye setting powder from Pat McGrath. I brought pink, but I also sometimes use light, which looks white, but it's translucent. Both are very sheer, finely milled, and I find that taking just a smidge more on the pointed tip of your sponge or a puff and pressing it where you're prone to creasing can help prevent that. And then you can just take that puff and press under your eyes to really fuse everything together. Now, this is where I set my face with my beloved Huda Beauty translucent powder in Pound Cake. I just pour some into my palm because it gives me a bigger surface area than this little tiny container that I decanted it into. And I press my puff or a sponge into it and then start pressing it to my face. And because I forgot to bring setting spray, don't ask me how, I'm going to do a little mini bake here with this powder and just let it sit and sort of absorb into my face while I move on to some other steps. It doesn't look powdery. It ends up looking very natural, trust me, and it'll also help keep shine away longer. So while this sets, I either moved on and did my brows with my Benefit Precisely My Detailer brow pencil, or applied the bronzer from my beloved, how many times am I saying beloved in this video, Smashbox Cali Contour palette to my lower lash line, extending it in the same direction as my lower lash line to create sort of a perimeter that my eye makeup won't go past. And I applied this in my crease in transition, nothing neat, just kind of haphazardly actually. Now, any setting powder that didn't absorb on its own while I was doing other things, I press in with my sponge or a puff. And now is when I go ahead and apply any color powder products to my face. Contour if I'm applying that, bronzer, and blush. I went ahead and curled my lashes at this point. I kind of did a preliminary curl, I guess, because I find sometimes if I curl my lashes after I apply eyeliner, it can remove or kind of stick to my eyeliner, and I didn't want to deal with that. So I went ahead and did that. I brought two little mini eyeshadow palettes. Natasha Denona Mini Nude is what we're reaching into first, and I also brought the Kaja Beauty Bento in Velvet Dream. I will be reaching into this too. I try not to bring big palettes when I travel. So I line first, which seems kind of backwards, but there's a method behind the madness. So I already did my transition and my lower lash line. So pretty much every day during the day, I took this deep brown chocolate shade and applied it along my lash line and lined with it. So I first took an angled eyeliner brush. I have this little travel one from Sigma, the E65, and I could have used the angled portion of this Persona dual-ended brush as well. And I start with a little flick here, not a wing. We're going to smudge things. And you can use that same angled brush, or you can use a flat brush like I'm doing in the demo with this E15 flat definer brush from Sigma. I don't know if they still have these travel brushes. I just typically use travel brushes when I travel. And I'm tight lining along my lash line. I'm just pressing that brush into the root of my lashes. And then to give my eye more of a lift, I just kind of build that line up with that same angled brush from where that flick is to kind of the midpoint of my eye. You can build it up however you want to. And then I like to take a small pencil brush. This is a travel Charlotte Tilbury brush, but you could use Refer. They have a great small pencil brush. I think it's number 23. I am taking a mixture of this matte shade and then the same chocolate shade, and I'm just smudging it along the lash line and sort of above. It's the easiest thing in the world, and it just gives this nice, relaxed, smudgy look. You can also use the flat end of that same Persona brush I showed you earlier. I'm taking that same mid-tone shade and putting a little bit more at the outer corner of my eye just to further that lift and give a little bit more depth. And I did that with this fluffy end of this Anastasia brush that I pulled from one of my Anastasia palettes. And with the other end, I'm just taking this shade from that Kaja palette and I'm putting it on the inner 2/3 of my eye, my brow bone, and my inner corner. I find having some kind of shadow on my lid helps even more with smudging and creasing. I could have done the same thing with this matte highlighting shade in the Smashbox Cali Contour palette, so I don't think I really needed this little palette after all. At night, if I wanted to add a little bit more drama, I just smudged a little bit more, made it a little bit more dramatic, and added one of these shimmers to my lid. So easy. Just in case I lost any of that lash curl when I was doing my eyeliner, I do a quick touch-up curl right at the root and apply a waterproof mascara. This will stay on all day without flaking or smudging, and it will hold my curl. This is the Judy Doll Curling Iron Mascara. It looks weird, but it works and it hits every lash. And I always comb through my lashes with a lash comb because it just helps them look fluffier and more natural, especially if I'm applying another coat, because you want that second coat to hit as many separated lashes as possible. So I brought two little travel mascaras. I wasn't sure which one I was going to reach for, and it turns out that I reached for the Tarte Maneater. This is such a great volumizing, lengthening mascara that never flakes, never smudges. This wore beautifully all day long. Now you can apply a regular mascara like this. You can apply another layer of waterproof or stick with your first layer and leave it at that. Now is the time when I applied my tinted brow gel. I brought e.l.f. Wow Brow in taupe. It's a little bit lighter to soften my brows a bit, and I also apply my lip liner. During the day, I wore Makeup by Mario Hue, which is this shade right here. It's sort of a pinky brown nude, or pinky nude cut with brown, that is basically my lip shade but better. I have more pigment on the outside of my lips than I do the inside, so this makes them look like they're all filled in. And my two daytime lip shades were on the sheer moisturizing side of things. We have Kosas Wet Stick. Is that the name of these? In Malibu, that's this shade right here. It's nice and pinky. That's what's been on my lips throughout this video. Now in this clip, I applied it on bottom and Smoky Rose from Nivea on top. This is the Rich Care and Color SPF lip balm from Nivea. This is from Japan. I ordered it from Yes Style. I've talked about this in a video, but it's really great for SPF protection during the day. And it has no scent or taste whatsoever, not even when you start drinking, which is the issue with a lot of SPF lip products. And I applied this on top and you really can't tell the difference. This feels a little bit more sheer, or a little bit thinner than the Kosas, but I really enjoy them both. And my lip combo at night was Charlotte Tilbury Icon Baby, which has a little bit more peachiness to it, but it's still cut with some pink, and Dance Floor Princess lipstick. That's it. Those are the lips that I brought. To help compensate for my lack of setting spray, this is when I added finishing powder to help with the longevity of my makeup. So not only does it help diffuse your pores and airbrush your makeup and just make it look really nice and pretty, but it can help your makeup last longer. So I just took a fluffy brush. I used the NYX brush that they launched with their recent bronzers and my MAC Mineralized Skin Finish Natural in Medium Plus, and I just dusted it all over my face. I have an entire recent video all about finishing powder with some great options in there. If you want to check that out after this video, I'll have it linked up in the corner and down below with everything I'm sharing with each day. And I'll have as many products linked through the YouTube shopping icons as I can, but but they don't always have everything. So if you don't see something through those pictures, definitely check my description box. The only additional thing I did at night that I didn't already tell you as we went through the video is adding extra coverage to my face. I typically would blot with a tissue or something, and then using that same soft, fluffy NYX brush, I dusted a very creamy, non-cakey powder foundation that I knew worked well over other makeup over my face. So let's do this right now. I don't want to add too much coverage because I haven't really lost that much, but you can see how MAC Studio Fix is just layering really nicely without looking powdery or makeup-y. And to help it look even more natural, just like I did earlier with the foundation, I just pressed it in to really lock it in place. And if I needed more blush or bronzer, I would just add that as needed. This is Too Faced Cloud Crush in Golden Hour. I wanted to bring something for a bit of a pop, something a little brighter than the Smashbox blush because I just like that. So I had a few extra eyeshadow brushes in here that I didn't use and didn't need, and of course this little eyeshadow stack that would have actually been fine if I didn't reach for the shimmers that I used at night. I brought these two Bobbi Brown eyeshadow sticks. Both of them were shimmers, but I didn't reach for cream eyeshadow during the day. Being out in that heat and humidity for that length of time, I just didn't trust it. I started out that way on travel day, and I just didn't really like the way I ended up at the end of the day. I also find it so much quicker and easier to apply eyeshadow as liner that I didn't reach for the eyeliner that I brought. I only used powder bronzer, so I didn't reach for my little Glossier Cloud Paint, even though I really do love this as a bronzer, and I didn't use the little travel Bad Gal Bang mascara. And you know, even though I used Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter, this little travel size, a couple of times, I don't think it's a must for me because the Smashbox Cali Contour highlighter is so pretty and natural looking. It doesn't look like a powder. I just don't think that this was really necessary if I was really trying to streamline things. So I feel like I could take this out too. All I carried with me when we were running around was my Fenty Invisimatte Blot Powder. I mean, this goes with me everywhere to help combat shine. I think I reached for this maybe once or twice during each, 12-hour day. That's really, really good. So I had this and I had whatever lip I was wearing. And you know, I thought about packing this because it's compact. You have everything here in cream form, highlighters, blushes, your camouflaging, concealing products, contour, and bronzer. But then I thought it's probably going to be a waste for me since I am relying so much on powder products, and since I was probably not going to be using these cover-up products. I had those picked out already. But if you have normal to dry skin, I think this is probably an ideal product to travel with. Okay, so everything remaining in these two bags is something I used on my trip. I took out all of the extra stuff that didn't end up being used. The reason why I pack two separate bags, one for brushes and tall, slim things, and the other for makeup, is for a couple of reasons. The first is that my makeup bags, both of them, need to be pretty thin because I carry them on if I'm flying in either a backpack or a tote. So they need to slide in and not be bulky. So while I love this type of bag, and I've shared this on my channel before, how I really enjoy it, it's great for local trips. It's not practical for me to carry on a plane because it's so wide and so bulky. So I typically check this in and have one side for hair products and the other for skincare. And it functions beautifully for that, but it just doesn't work for a slim makeup bag for the plane. And functionality wise, one of the first things I do when I sit down to do my makeup is to take all of my makeup brushes and the tall, slim things, if they're not packed like this, if I'm having to rifle through them, if they're in something like this, is to find a cup or something and put them in there because I want to be able to see and reach for everything very quickly. This is why I'm so picky about my makeup bags. I can't stand having to rifle through bags to find things, whether it's a makeup bag like this one. I know a lot of people use this style of makeup bag. I can't stand it because everything is all jumbled together. And then you have those makeup bags that have the top compartment where your makeup goes and then the bottom zipper compartment where brushes go. So you have to keep flipping back and forth. No, that's not going to work. So I typically look for something that is flatter, that I can can see everything and reach for it easily. This one is from Alley Glines. Now there are some packing cube type bags that open really widely that work pretty well. And then Amazon has some clear bags kind of similar to this. And there are some other brands too, but that's typically what I look for. That's my preference when it comes to makeup bags. Now when it comes to brushes, that's a little more difficult. Now this is probably the most perfect option I've found up to this point. This is from Delium Tools and I have had this forever. I wasn't sure if they still made it, but I did find it in a couple of places, and one of them is Amazon. It also comes in black. Delium Tools does have a storefront, but it doesn't show its Amazon Prime, but it does show its free shipping and free returns. It's this soft neoprene fabric that still looks fantastic despite me having used it tons of times. And I do want to show you the size compared to the BK Beauty version of this. It holds a lot more. Now it looks huge because I have a small head. It's really not this big, but it holds a ton while staying slim. The zipper is very smooth and it folds back easily and stays, and it expands. So you can fit a lot in here. Okay, let me get you at a better angle. So I think you can see there are two sections in here. I usually keep the bigger, taller brushes back here and then shorter things here. And then there's this little front pouch where I keep really short things, and things never seem to fall out. This is exactly the right height for me to be able to see my travel brushes and get to them. It's not a black hole down here, so I can carry both my tall full-size brushes, which this is. I can carry my little teeny tiny travel brushes, and I can see everything. Sometimes I throw extra stuff in here when I'm packing too. I'll put sponges and poofs and just close it all up and everything fits. I love this thing. I'll see if Amazon has other options that are a similar size to this, but I've been carrying this for 5 or 6 years for a reason. I love that it just slides right down into my tote or my backpack, just like my makeup bag. I think I fit way more in that video than I originally intended, but I just wanted to share these things with you. I hope you found this fun and helpful. And you know what? If you have not seen my original packing toiletries video from years ago, a lot of people found that helpful. I should probably update that, but you can check it out here. And if you want to see more details from mine and Brooke's New York trip, I posted about it on Instagram. It's now in a highlight on my profile page, so you can check that out too. I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.